and welcome everybody to What's Your Story? Thank you for joining us, everybody that's on YouTube and Facebook currently. I am the Life Orchestrator Millionaire, Dr. Varun Gandhi. Love and abundance, everybody. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. We are blessed today because we are in the presence of our guest, Soniya Gokhale, in How Divorce Led to Transformation. That is the title of this episode, and we will find out why. So, just a little bit intro. Divorce is a hard place to be. There's the relationship is not there anymore. Then you have all these emotions, the memories, the memorabilia, the things that are left behind from the divorce. And then you have to change your whole story around this relationship all of a sudden. So divorce is not a fun place to be in, unless it was a hard marriage and you actually wanted to get out of the divorce. That's a different story. And this is what we're going to be talking about today, about how divorce changed our guest's life. So everybody that's tuning in, Facebook, YouTube, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Invite a friend to join in and watch this interview with you. And subscribe to this channel, please. Also, if you have a question for our guest, if you're going through certain challenges in your life and you'd like to find out how our guest went through her challenges, please post a comment, ask your question, and we will make sure Soniya answers all your questions. So a little bit about Soniya. She was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, to parents who immigrated to the US from India in 1962 to pursue engineering and medicine. She graduated with an MBA at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. She has spent most of her career in corporate America, in corporate real estate and strategy. And currently, she works for a Fortune 100 company. Soniya launched ADesiWoman.com, an associated podcast series in fall of 2020. And she was inspired to launch the series to amplify stories and narratives from around the world. Her belief is that we're all connected beyond race, beyond religion, beyond caste, color, or geography, and our stories matter. She's currently based in Columbus, Ohio, and she has 4 children, Jay, Lena, Arjun, and Dylan. Soniya, it's so wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for being here. What's your story, Soniya? Let's hear it. What happened? What's been your journey thus far?
Sure. Thank you so much, first of all, for hosting me. It's such a distinct pleasure. And I have to say that I was really reticent to come on here and talk about this because it's certainly not an uplifting story at first blush, right? What I would challenge everyone and why I'm here is because you and I have chatted, and boy, my sincere belief is that I can actually help somebody right now, a man or a woman. If you're going through this process, contemplating it, just know that it's a path others have been on before. And fortunately, in our diaspora and our communities, I don't know that we talk about it enough. And so I definitely found myself in a very isolating place. And I'd love to speak to you more about how I got to the journey and through the journey where I am today, because it's distinctly different than where I was when this began. So enough for that.
Yeah, definitely. So let's dive into it. How did it get started? What was that whole the marriage like, and what's the story behind it?
Yeah, so I think what shocked me the most is, and this is just from my situation, I still have immense love. And so that's confusing, right? Because, and I do offer that each narrative, each story is different. In my podcast series, which we'll talk about shortly, there are women that are trapped in horribly violent situations, or those that entail verbal abuse of many kinds. And I would not in any way, shape, or form advise them to stay for the long haul. There's so many risks involved in that. So that's one scenario. And I suppose there's a spectrum, right, that we all go through in arriving at this decision. And it wasn't easy. I still have moments where I'm like, did we do the right thing? Because as you mentioned, we have 4 children. And I have to say this, I was born and raised a Hindu. My parents are extremely devout Hindus, but very spiritual minded. And the whole concept of dharma is also extremely important in this conversation, because in our religion and background, we actually don't believe in divorce. In fact, during the marriage ceremony, we invoke our ancestors on both sides of the family to come and bless this union. And I remember that very well because I have a fascination with mysticism and spirituality. That really struck me. And we have a gotra. I'm not an advocate of caste in any capacity, but I happen to be Brahmin. And so I found out what our gotra is. And when you stop and look at that, it goes back sometimes centuries. I mean, really. And so it's a daunting process. My husband as well, ex-husband, was also a Brahmin. And so there's also that sort of heaviness. And I think that this is something that we definitely, I had anyone speak about it, but because of background, that weighed heavily upon me. I think was really, really shocking for me is that we tend to invisibilize women, especially in our communities. And we treat men very differently than we do women. I was really disappointed because to this day, more than a couple of people have come to me and asked me, how are you doing? Forget about, you're going to have gossip, you're going to have stories. Even the most educated, progressive communities, you'd like to think that doesn't happen, but unfortunately it does. And that also took me back because they don't know the circumstances of our situation. And yet, all too often, we are, and I've done this before, we are willing to take a side, quote unquote, a side. And I would offer to people, and it's a learning process for me as well, if you hear somebody has gone through this, just reach out and say, hey, how are you? And if there's anything I can do, let me know. That could mean the world to them. Not so much the drama of it, which again, I was really disappointed and very taken aback. I would think that maybe if, and this is so stereotypical, but I thought perhaps with education level, with a progressive sort of family, that maybe we would be protected from some of the trivial gossip and sort of demeaning and aspects of this deeply, deeply sad situation. And yet I find that sadly, and that's why I'm here today, is just to tell people, look, this isn't death. It is the death of a relationship, but life does go on. And that's really the key. And what can you do? I challenge every listener, every viewer right now. What can you do to help uplift somebody when you hear about this? Because I guarantee you, it will not only, I mean, we believe in karma, obviously in our religion, but just from a pandemic perspective and all the challenges that we're seeing across society, I challenge you to say, you know what, I'm not going to get into the mud and jump in the fray of gossip, but rather, how can I bring a light into what many perceive to be a dark moment? And so that's what I've learned from it. So I really grew in terms of how I will now approach others.
So what suggestion would you give for someone who is, a friend, maybe knows someone that's going through a hard time? How would you suggest them approaching this conversation? Because it's a hard conversation to have even amongst friends sometimes, especially like, guy on guy. Sometimes guys are not open to talking about it. So what would you suggest? Would you have some sort of recommendation on how they can approach that conversation?
Sure, absolutely. I would say this. First of all, I have an amazing life coach because I would offer that you don't need to have all the answers. And as I stated before, many people have been down this path and road. And I think that there are many psychologists who are from our diaspora. And this is important because I have an amazing woman that I speak with, but a lot of my time spent talking to her, and she's helped me in this whole journey, is kind of educating her about our culture and some of the norms and issues that we perhaps face that are distinct than those in the United States and perhaps an Anglo-Saxon type of background. And so I would say that talk to somebody when you, whether I recognize maybe guy to guy it can be challenging. Just say, how are you doing? Are you okay? And you know, some people may not be interested in sort of asking for help or replying with a lot of verbiage. It may be too painful. But I would offer that you might be surprised by the response you get. Maybe somebody is willing and just demonstrating that you care. But you are absolutely right that this cuts across all backdrops of society, that even in the United States, you don't know what to say to people. It's pretty amazing, you know, because it's one of those odd things that until I experienced it, really I had not anticipated this. Yeah. So it's like, you don't know what to say. So I get that. I get that 100%.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's not taught to us anywhere. You know, you have to learn it from life. As you experience it, you kind of pick those lessons up and you have to learn. So communication especially is not really taught in colleges. You know, I went through 10 years
Right.
of and we barely,
Right.
yeah, you know, we barely went through verbal communication. So while you were going through this, you know, through the whole situation, what was society's reaction to you? How were they kind of, you know, were there friends that were helpful? Was family helpful? Was, you know, society at large there to support you, or you know, how was the situation for you?
Yeah, so you know what was a bit shocking to me is, as I stated, people do tend to take sides. I have never really done this. I certainly know a lot of people that have gotten divorced, but for whatever reason, I had a longstanding family friend actually who unfriended me on Facebook, and I think he is, you know, friends with my ex. But it's so fascinating that in his mind, I mean, to be honest with you, that is not really a friendship I would want, right? I tend to embark on friendships that are built on something a bit deeper. But it is revealing. It is so revealing about other people's character, perhaps where they are in their life journey, right? Because though you're going through a divorce, you certainly get to see how people react when you're in the midst of what's certainly not a pleasant experience. And so you tend to learn who has your back, who perhaps you would like to keep in your life, and who, even if they're extended family, that you kind of know where they stand. And those that probably the most important relationship that's really been renewed within the past year have been the support of my parents. They have just been absolutely amazing. They're deeply spiritual people. And so I've really taken a spiritual viewpoint of this. My sister as well has been unbelievably supportive. And I have a couple of female cousins that really come through. I would say this, I'm at a point now where I don't need that support. I'm not needy. And I think that there is a point where you do feel that way. And it's completely normal. But my parents have stated, and my dad said this, and I think it's so amazing and unique, and obviously it comes from a Hindu perspective. We are a soul group. And so even in this lifetime, and in India, I've interviewed a lot of guests from India, and they accept reincarnation as a fact, right? They have this amazing ability to say, look, we're going to leave this body. It's a costume. And I think that resonates with me even more so as a divorcee, because there is immense love. I have 4 amazingly beautiful children, and I'm going to be connected to him for the rest of my life. And you better believe I am going to make absolutely certain that it's never about me or my pain, my suffering. It's about our children. And they are just starting this beautiful journey in life. So they are never going to feel that, oh, wow, we have to sort of pick sides or deal with mom and dad's drama. It hurts when I see people engaging in that, because they certainly didn't ask for this, right?
You know, that is such a good point, because my cousin currently is going through something very similar, where the parents can't agree on certain things, and so the kids are suffering. So in that situation, what would you recommend? What would you tell these parents to, like, how do they come to an agreement? How do they see this bigger picture? What can what can you offer them that could help change their perspective?
So what I would say to them is get your head on straight. And I know this is going to sound tough, right? But put yourself in that child's shoes, okay? This is just the beginning of their lives. Their whole world has shattered around them. And what they need more than anything is to see two level-headed adults who have made a decision to perhaps go their separate ways, but recognize that these children were born out of love, and that is how they need to proceed onwards in life. Take that torch that was lit literally at your fire ceremony, if you're in a Hindu ceremony, and use that as a way to light the path forward for your children, even if it's not burning brightly for your marriage anymore, for those children. And then you set an example for others, right? Anyone that might have been judgmental or perhaps was picking sides, guess what? There's no sides to pick. I want you to win. I want you to win. I want you to win. I want everyone to win. And so it really is sort of a moot point. And I'm so heartbroken that that's happening in your situation, as you mentioned, but it happens all the time. And I think it comes from a place of really just focusing on yourself versus understanding how this decision impacts your children, which do require a selflessness in approaching this matter. Therapy is also extremely important. I don't know that every child necessarily will respond to that. It really depends on the age, but it is a resource that we have in this country. And interesting about children is, and even adolescents, is they will say things to strangers that they may not divulge to their own parents and to their own family. And so it's very important in this day and age where suicides are rampant, schools are still slowly opening up. It's a very different environment than they used to be in, where they could go to school and sort of have a congenial atmosphere with their friends. That may not exist anymore. And so it's even more important.
You mentioned therapy, kids going to therapy. I think that's a really beautiful point. And I want to talk a little bit more about it because I feel that there are a lot of parents who are against sending their kids to therapy because of the word therapy and what it kind of signifies. So can you share from your experience how therapy has helped you or your kids or whoever has been through therapy that you know? Can you share from experience how it's changed lives?
Absolutely. And I think I completely understand the hesitation from our community. In fact, I just did a podcast about it, and with Dr. Usha Tamalanara, who's an amazing PhD, and she sees clients remotely, by the way. But, I think what's really important is having a framework of there is pathology. There's no way around it, right? It exists in behavior. It exists in families. And at times, children or even adults, you may blame yourself and say, what is wrong with me? And what a good therapist does is sort of holds up for you. Hey, this is what a signpost, this is what is quote unquote normal or perhaps removed from pathology. And what you're experiencing, I would offer, is not healthy. So what you're feeling is actually normal. Now, how do we then change the situation? And they can help you. If it's a troubling, violent, abusive situation, they are required by law to report that. And so certainly there could be reticence from those within our diaspora, the community, or in the United States in general, but there might be things going on that should not be going on. And especially with children, it's critical. This is how child abuse is often discovered, and so it's very important. I would say this as well, that you don't have to do it alone. And so what therapy really does, and I'm a big believer that this need not be a crutch for the rest of your life. In fact, I've found that I can actually decrease the number of times I see my life coach. And that's a great thing, right? That demonstrates that, hey, I'm better. I feel confident. I feel good about my life. I feel good about my decisions. And that is ultimately what we want for our children. And so that's why I think that therapy really, you have nothing to lose. I think that's one way to look at it, unless there is something going on in the home that shouldn't be, right? But ultimately, even that should be disrupted if indeed it is something that's damaging to those in the household.
Right, right. That's a good point. Yeah, I think uh, you know, kids take divorce harder a lot of the times than adults do, right? And so this therapy can kind of help them process their emotions, process their feelings, uh, and help them cope through these hard times. So when you were kind of going through your divorce and kind of going through these rough times, what did you do to cope with these hard times?
Well, I mean, as far as my children, I will be very candid. That is a lifelong work in progress. They have to come to reconcile the concept that my parents are not together and we are not a family in the way that we used to be. I would suggest, I mean, there's an amazing book. I haven't opened it up. I intend to. It's called Conscious Uncoupling. And I know that Gwyneth Paltrow and other celebrities were huge advocates of it. But I think, as I stated before, the goal is to say, look, Dad and I are not together like romantically or in the way that you knew as sort of, mom, dad together, but we are here as your biggest cheerleaders for the rest of your life. And the only thing I can do is continue to show up in that capacity, right? Be the best version of myself. And I think ultimately, if they see that you're happier, you're more functional, life is just better, they're going to be all on board for that. And I think with teenagers, especially, they get to a point where like they don't want to know about mom and dad's stuff. They don't care about the drama. They don't care about who you're dating, what you're doing. They have their own lives. And so I think the best thing to do for that age group, and that's where I think a therapist can be invaluable, is to sort of just be the biggest advocate you can for what's going on in their lives. And not make it focus, as you gave an example in your family, about issues they have with their ex-partner. And move towards a more a united, it's a new family, right? Because as I said before, my dad always said, we travel in soul groups, and I believe that. So when my kids get married, I will be there, and I hope to be part of that ceremony. I know my ex would be there, and I sincerely hope he will. And so, the focus is, it's not the end of life. It's not. It's just a twist. One of many, unfortunately, that we do often face, right? And one of many.
Yeah, I think that's a very beautiful perspective that you just offered. So, what you're a mother of four, and how did your kids take this? How did they go through this whole situation, and where are they currently at?
Yeah, so it was definitely a horrible experience for them. And I think that there's no question that I don't even probably know the depth of it. But I think that what I can say is that today, a couple of years later, we did have the full support, lots of extended family, and especially my parents, who just are the most amazing parents and grandparents. And so I think that support is really important. And then, as I stated before, ultimately, my younger two, one who's now in high school, one is in middle school, all they care about is just getting on with their lives. They're very, very immersed in their friendships, school activities, academics, and my older ones are now in college. And they do have many friends whose parents are divorced. And I thought it was really cool. And they go to a private school in Columbus. They had, I don't know if they have this anymore, it was called Banana Splits. It was a group for kids that are in elementary school, more at the elementary school level. And they could kind of just all get together as an activity-based, grouping to sort of work through whatever that looks like. For children of divorced parents. I think that they are thriving now. They're happy and hopeful. I mean, the pandemic certainly did not help, if any children in any capacity, but in a weird way, it sort of took the focus off of yeah, all of this. And it was more like, wow, the world is just going nuts and is on lockdown right now. So that's kind of been, yeah, one interesting nuance, but they're doing absolutely amazing. I couldn't be more proud.
Wow, that's amazing
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
And then you reached a critical point in your life, and you asked yourself this fundamental question, which is, what was that question, and how did you arrive to the point?
Yeah, it was so interesting because I found out that there was a trip being planned, like a family trip, and pretty much everyone was going, even those a few from my side of the family, except for me. I was not included in this trip, and I cannot even, it got canceled because of the pandemic. But I can't tell you like what effect that had on me, you know, because it would be my ex, my children, my ex-in-laws. It just shattered me, and I felt very excluded. And that was a turning point for me. And I said, you know what, I need to find community. And so I started a Facebook group. It's called Women's Empowerment. It's a women's empowerment group. And I started it last year in March, and it now has 800 people in it. And I cannot describe to you, but if there's any women or men listening right now, this is what I can tell you. There are people, there is a community out there that is probably hurting, if not as badly as you, maybe even worse. And I kid you not, I do call out my privilege. I recognize I come from a background of an amazing educational background, great job, amazing family. And so I feel really contrite about complaining too much. But what I found is that there is community. There is a group out there for you who will embrace you, who will accept you exactly where you are, as you are, how you are. And do not ever think otherwise. Not ever. And if it's not within our ethnic community or diaspora, go broader, go bigger, because I never imagined that this group would form this way. And that is then how I said, okay, what do I want my impact on this life to be? We only have one lifetime. We're only in this body one time. What do I want that to look like? And I realized that, I want to be the change that I want to see in the world. I was rejected, judged, perhaps invisibilized. I know it's not a word per se, but I'm enjoying using it. How can I make sure that others do not feel that way? Do not feel that way. And so that's been my biggest goal, and also bringing stories forth of inspiration that we don't hear on mainstream media, talking to people around the world, because we're much more connected than we ever imagined. The pandemic has sort of put a bright strobe light on that fact, if we ever doubted it, right? What happens in one happens in the all. I've really leaned into spirituality, not just Hinduism, but all kinds of spirituality, because ultimately I do believe they all lead to one path, and I guarantee you that our commonalities far outweigh our differences. And so it's a much longer answer than you probably anticipated.
I definitely agree with that. You know, the last line you said, our commonalities much outweigh our differences. I read somewhere that 99.9% of us are exactly the same. It's just that 0.1% that keeps fighting against each other.
That's right.
That's such a eye-opening statement, but it's so true. So, Sonia, what's one message you would like to give the community?
Let's see. What I want to say is that, in your everyday lives, in your encounters with your loved ones, instead of being quick to respond to perhaps what your perception is of a situation, I would ask you to approach it from the highest possible source of positivity, inspiration, and light within yourself. And I get it. That is a big ask, right? But I would say if you start every day to respond to everything, whether it's your work, your interactions with your friends, your family, your children, your life will transform. And always seek to give more than you take. Because this is probably one of the biggest lessons that I've gotten through this whole journey is we need more people who are willing to sort of bare their souls as I'm doing today. It's not in my comfort zone. I don't talk about myself. I interview people on my podcast, but I am doing this as a sort of a way to hopefully bring a light to any men or women, any young people that are listening today, who have felt like we're in the depths of despair. Don't give up. Do not. We need you. The planet needs you. Reach out to me. And I'm not even kidding. Reach out. Absolutely. There's somebody here that would love to hear your story and talk to you.
How can they reach out to you?
So you can reach out to me at www.adesiwoman.com. And my email is Soniya@adesiwoman.com. And I believe you may have that, my name and how it's spelled on your promotional materials. But I don't say this lightly. I'm very serious in offering this to your audience because otherwise it's for naught. Everything I've gone through is for naught if I can't possibly help one person do this and answer questions. I'm even contemplating writing a book about this experience because there's so much I wish I had known. And perhaps in collaboration with the psychologist as well, because they are a friend. I would offer counselor, life coach, psychologist, or even just a friend. Don't go it alone, no matter what you're facing in life.
I would highly recommend writing that book because your story will change lives. People need to hear this. People can learn from you, and I feel that book has to be written. So whenever you get the chance, please, please, please do it. And
thank you. Thank you, Varun.
This is our manifestation. This is our manifestation for the future. That a book will be written on this topic by Soniya and Gokhale. So Soniya, a last question. We mentioned everyday stories, right? And we are really good at celebrating those success stories of, when someone achieves $1 billion, $1 million, $1 gazillion, or whatever it is. But how do we teach our kids to celebrate the everyday stories, the everyday wins?
Yeah, so this is really interesting because I think though our parents or family members immigrated to this country, right, for opportunity, I would say that capitalism, the negative side, downside of that is that you're constantly in search of being productive in a way that is demonstrative, right? You should have a pile of paperwork or a bunch of projects completed. And I would say to you, no. I would say, look at your energy. Look at how you're approaching the day and how you are reflecting back into the universe, your state of mind. Because meditation, self-reflection, and sort of understanding how you're responding to things in your world is so critically important. And so I would ask you, have you been kind today? Have you been kind to yourself today? Have you rested when you needed to? Because if we all started to do that a bit more, I genuinely believe like things like road rage and things that we see, just general irritability would go the wayside. And we need to teach our children this too. So mindfulness and not being confused with what you see on social media, on news outlets, but rather really getting in touch with what and how you are in this life and your happiness meter. It's so important.
That's those questions, asking yourself those questions on a daily basis is such a beautiful way to kind of get yourself aligned with what makes you happy and what doesn't, because a lot of people, they don't realize that what they're doing makes them unhappy, but they still keep doing it. They still keep inflicting that pain on themselves, where if they just ask this question, they could easily get out of it. So those are, really, really beautiful questions to ask.
And one last tip. I've heard Oprah say this, and every morning, as each foot hits the ground, as I get out of bed, one says thank, the other says full. And I start my day that way every day so that I know I'm so thankful to be here another day and make a difference in whatever that looks like for that day. Gratitude. So important.
Okay, that's a beautiful, beautiful point. Gratitude thankful 2 steps as you wake up first thing in the morning. That's amazing. Sonia, this has been a fantastic interview. This has been a fantastic conversation. Our audience has gained a lot from it. Thank you so much for everything that you've added, all of your advice, all the beautiful stories that you've shared. We're really grateful for you being here. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sonia. Love and abundance, everybody. Thank you for joining in. It's been a
Yeah.
fascinating conversation, a fascinating interview, and we will be back again very soon with another interview. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you have a great day.
Bye.